Judicial nominees: Judge Jacqueline Austin in the District of South Carolina, Judge Jacqueline Becerra, Southern District of Florida, Judge Melissa Damian, Southern District of Florida, David Leibovitz, Southern District of Florida, Judge Julie Sneed, Middle District of Florida, and Kirk Sheriff to the Eastern District of California. Congratulations to the nominees and their families and friends who are here today. This is an interesting day in the committee because both Senator Graham and I, on a bipartisan basis, have urged Republican senators to sit down with the Biden White House and see if they could reach a common agreement on nominations. It is not unheard of. During the Trump administration, Senator Duckworth and I filled every vacancy and negotiated with the Trump White House. The difference in political philosophy was obvious, but we believe that we found nominees who really would be neutral or at least objective in dealing with the law. And this has happened again today. I'd like to thank President Biden and my Republican colleagues, and especially my colleague, Senator Graham, for achieving this status. Some people are skeptical of the so-called blue slip, which gives to the senators from the state the ultimate word as to whether a nomination goes forward. We both believe in it if it is used conscientiously and fairly, and today is evidence that it can be. We have 35 more judicial vacancies in states with Republican senators. I urge every single one of them to sit down with the White House and see if they can find some common ground for these nominations. It's not impossible. It takes some patience and give and take, but ultimately we can fill these vacancies and the American people expect us to. I'm going to turn to Senator Graham for opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. The reason I'm so supportive of the blue slip, I'd like to have a say about who's going to be a district judge in South Carolina. And under the current process, I have a say. Don't have a say anymore about Court of Appeals and everything's majority vote except for the blue slip at the district court level. I've come to realize I'm probably not going to get everybody I want from South Carolina, but I'll have a say. And I'm just urging Democrats and Republicans, don't lose that power. I think it's good for the judiciary to have people elected from the state having input as to who should be a lifetime federal district court judge. And the only way this works is for us to recognize when y'all win and y'all recognize when we win, things are going to be different. So I found common ground with the White House counsel, who's been really pretty good to work with. On this side, to my colleagues, thank you. I know it's always best to get the people you'd want to pick, but sometimes that's just not possible, and there's people from the left and the right expect you to have the same outcome as if you lose the election as if you won it. They do matter, elections, and one of the things that matters about an election, Mr. Chairman, is who picks judges. So we found common ground with the White House counsel, with Judge Austin. To my colleagues on this side, yet again, thank you for working with the Biden administration to the extent you can to keep the Senate intact as much as possible. And I want the Senate, at the end of the day, still to be the Senate. And it's going to take working together.
Senator, why don't you introduce Judge Austin?
It is my pleasure. Judge Austin is filling the vacancy left by Judge Michelle Childs, who's on the U.S. Court of Appeals for the District of Columbia. Impressive would be an understatement. She graduated from the University of South Carolina in 1989 with a degree in electrical engineering, which blows me away. The reason I went to law school is you didn't have to do math. So, and sure don't have to do it being in the Senate. So that's a very impressive start. She worked as a nuclear regulatory engineer at Summer Nuclear Station in South Carolina from 89 to 93, then decided to go back to law school. And that, to me, is very impressive. She clerked for Judge Matthew Perry, who's a legend in our state. He's the first African-American United States District Judge in South Carolina. He was a true gentleman. At the end of the day, she's had a successful career, not only clerking, but she was in private practice. She worked as a patent attorney in a law firm before moving over to the Wombley Carlisle law firm. I think that's right, close enough. She became a partner. And then she was selected to be the United States Magistrate Judge in Greenville, South Carolina, where she continues to serve. She lives in Greenville. She's happy to be in Greenville. She wants to stay in Greenville. We need judges in Greenville. And she was rated unanimously well qualified by the ABA. She has a terrific family. I think she's an outstanding choice, and I'm glad we're able to reach an agreement, and Senator Scott has returned his blue slip. So welcome to the committee.
Thank you, Senator Graham. I seldom correct you, but I've learned as a plaintiff's attorney you have to know enough math to divide by 3.
Yeah, that's where I stopped.
Next is Senator Padilla, who is here to introduce Mr. Sheriff.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And as someone who still likes math, one thing I'm trying to figure out is how in the Senate, 60 is the new 51. But that's a conversation for a different.
And you're an engineer too, right?
Yes, sir. Mechanical.
There you go.
Because electrical is way over my head. Thank you, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member Graham. It's my privilege to join you today to introduce Kirk Sheriff, President Biden's nominee to serve on the United States District Court for the Eastern District of California. Mr. Sheriff is joined today by his wife, Samia, and their 3 sons, his mother, Susan, and her husband, Rick, his sister-in-law, Samar, and brother-in-law, Dennis, and his nephew. He's also joined by his friends and colleagues who are watching from back home in California. Now, growing up in the Sacramento region, Mr. Sheriff was raised for some periods of time by a single mother who worked hard to support her family, an experience that he says shaped his appreciation for both the opportunities this country provides and the critical need for strong public institutions in America. And it was largely because of his mother's hard work that he was able to earn his undergraduate degree from Columbia University and later his law degree from Harvard Law School. Mr. Sheriff began his career working as an associate in the litigation department of White and Case, where he focused on arbitration and civil litigation. Early in his career, he also clerked on the New Jersey Supreme Court for Chief Justice Deborah Poritz. But several years later, he would move home to California and begin work in the district that would come to define his career in public service. In 2002, Mr. Sheriff joined the Civil Division of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District in California. After 5 years focused on litigating forest fire cases, civil fraud, tort cases, and more before the District Court and the Ninth Circuit, Mr. Sheriff moved to the Criminal Division. He would eventually work his way to serve as the chief of the Fresno and Bakersfield offices of the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District, where he oversees 4 Fresno unit chiefs and 20 attorneys and the prosecution of crimes in the southern half of the district. Before becoming chief of the Fresno and Bakersfield office, he directly led prosecution of white-collar crimes, including mortgage, investment, tax, and healthcare fraud. Over the course of his career, he's developed an impeccable reputation in the Fresno legal community for being fair, sharp, and incredibly hard-working. A superbly well-qualified candidate to sit on the bench for the U.S. District Court for the Eastern District. But more than that, Mr. Sheriff has a personal and nuanced understanding of the district that he'll serve. He understands the needs of the diverse communities and historically disadvantaged communities of the Central Valley because for the last 2 decades, he's been there, serving the Eastern District and engaging in community outreach. His deep roots in the community, his wealth of experience, and his fundamental understanding and respect for human dignity will make him a strong addition to the federal bench, and I urge my colleagues to join me in supporting his nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. Senator Butler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. It is not often that one gets to combine Mississippi and California. I am honored to have the opportunity to do that as one of the few who personify it myself. Mr. Sheriff was born in Berkeley, California, and as Senator Padilla noted, attended Columbia University. But before becoming a lawyer, He worked as a teacher for the Mississippi Teacher Corps program, where he taught high school in 2 historically underserved schools in the Mississippi Delta. If confirmed, Mr. Sheriff would be joining one of the busiest courts in the country. Based on most recent statistics available from the Administrative Office of the U.S. Courts, the Eastern District of California is currently seeing, on average, 803 filings for each judgeship on the court. That caseload level is the 6th highest of any federal district court in the country. It is vitally important that we confirm Mr. Sheriff as quickly as possible to ensure that the Eastern District is able to continue its work of ensuring the people of California have full and timely access to our justice system. Mr. Sheriff has shown a deep commitment to public service and the rigor of handling both criminal and civil cases throughout his career. I believe he will be an asset on the federal bench in the Eastern District of California. I thank the chair for holding this hearing and urge my colleagues to join me in supporting Mr. Sheriff's nomination. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Senator. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Florida nominees. Today we'll hear from Judge Jacqueline Becerra for the District Court for the Southern District of Florida. Judge Becerra received her undergraduate degree from the University of Miami and her JD from Yale Law School. Served as federal prosecutor in the District of Columbia and the Southern District of Florida, where she worked on a wide range of criminal matters, including prosecutions of large drug traffickers. Following her time in public service, she joined Greenberg Traurig as a shareholder, worked on a variety of commercial disputes, internal investigations, and the Foreign Corrupt Practices Act compliance. She also served as co-chair of the Global White Collar Defense and Investigations Practice and the firm's Women Initiative. In 2019, Judge Becerra was appointed by district judges of the Southern District of Florida to serve as magistrate. She's presided over 4 civil trials and has issued over 1,100 orders and reports and recommendations. Judge Becerra, congratulations to you and your family. We look forward to your testimony. Next, I'd like to introduce Judge Melissa Damian, nominated to the Southern District of Florida. A graduate of Princeton and the University of Miami School of Law, Judge Damian, clerk for the Honorable Ursula Ungaro, the very seat to which she's now nominated to fill. After working in private practice, Judge Damian was an assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of Florida for over 10 years. Thereafter, she returned to private practice, representing plaintiffs in asbestos and tobacco product liability cases, and later focusing on litigating complex issues of business and commercial law. Over the course of her legal career, Judge Damian tried more than 30 cases to verdict. Since 2022, she served as magistrate on the Southern District. Judge Damian, welcome to you and your family. Next, we have David Leibowitz, nominated to the Southern District of Florida. Born in Miami, received his undergraduate degree from the University of Pennsylvania, his PhD from the London School of Economics and Political Science before earning his JD at the Pennsylvania Law School. After clerking for Associate Justice Robert Flanders on the Supreme Court of Rhode Island, Mr. Leibowitz started his legal career as an assistant district attorney in the Middlesex District Attorney's Office in Cambridge, Massachusetts. 2003, he began serving as assistant U.S. attorney in the Southern District of New York, where he investigated and prosecuted federal crimes. In 2012, he moved to Miami and joined the Bremen Management Association, the group's secretary and general counsel and chief legal officer. I congratulate Mr. Leibowitz and his family on this nomination. Finally, we have Judge Julie Sneed, nominated to the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida. Judge Sneed received her undergraduate degree from the University of Florida and her JD from Florida State University College of Law. After clerking for Judge Chris Altenberg of the Second District Court of Appeals of Florida, she went on to private practice and served as law clerk for Judge James Whitmore of the U.S. District Court for the Middle District of Florida. Judge Sneed returned to private practice where she represented large corporations in civil, business, and commercial litigation, both state and federal. During this time, she tried 10 cases to verdict. Since 2015, she has served as magistrate judge for the same district to which she's nominated and issued more than 1,000 orders and opinions. I look forward to hearing more about Judge Sneed's breadth of experience. Congratulations to you and her family. With that, I ask the panel to approach the bench, or the table, witness table, and be sworn in. Do you affirm the testimony you're about to give before this committee will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God? Let the record reflect that all of the nominees, thank goodness, have answered in the affirmative. Judge Austin, we're going to give you 5 minutes, and each on the panel have the same amount of time. Please proceed.
Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, members of the Senate Judiciary Committee, I appreciate the opportunity to be here today. First, I want to thank President Biden for nominating me to serve as a district judge in the District of South Carolina. It is an honor to be nominated. I want to thank my home state senators, Senator Graham and Senator Scott, for their support. I especially appreciate Senator Graham's remarks this morning. I'd also like to thank my family today for their love and support, and for my family members that can be here today. My parents are not able to be here today. They're watching online. My niece, Lauren, and her fiance are with them to help them get online to manage the technology. My father is retired Army and a minister. So I grew up a preacher's kid and an Army brat, which makes me well-rounded and grounded. My mother stayed home to raise me and my 4 siblings and to keep us in line, and I think she did a pretty good job of that. All of my siblings are here today. My brother, Dr. Samuel Graham, is here today. He is the dean of the engineering school at the University of Maryland, so more engineers in our family, with my sister-in-law, Shalonda, and my niece, Cameron, who is also a biomechanical engineer. My brother Sean is here, and with my sister-in-law, Kristen. My sister Maxine is also an engineer and a lawyer. She's an IP lawyer with Wells Fargo. And my sister Shannon is here as well. I appreciate them taking the time out of their busy lives to be here today. I'd also like to thank my husband of 26 years, who is always so gracious in his support of our family. He owns a couple businesses of his own, so I know he's probably missing about 100 phone calls during this hearing, but I appreciate his support today. I'd especially like to also thank my children for watching this hearing online today. My son, Trey, is a graduate student at the University of Miami and is hoping to attend Law next year. My daughter is a sophomore at Nova Southeastern University in Florida as well. So my kids are enjoying the fact that I'm on this panel with some Florida lawyers. They're both right now in the middle of projects and exams, so they're watching online today. In addition to my immediate family, I'd like to thank my very best friend from law school for being here today, Valika Peoples-Dyer. She's here to support me. Also, my cousin, Kelvin Williams, is here to support me. He lives here in DC. And I'm also thankful to the judges of the District of South Carolina, a lot of them who texted me this morning about 5 o'clock to make sure that, to let me know that they were thinking about me. And lastly, I'd like to thank my current law clerks, Heath Beard and Matthew Fitzer, who are sitting behind me, for their support. I would not be here today without them. Again, thank you to the committee for your time today, and I look forward to hearing your questions.
Thank you very much, Judge. Judge Becerra.
Thank you, Chair Durbin and Ranking Member Graham, for scheduling this morning's hearing. I also want to thank all the members of the committee and their staffs for their diligence and consideration of my nomination. I would like to thank the President for this honor, as well as my home state senators, Marco Rubio and Rick Scott, for their support. I am beyond blessed and delighted to be joined this morning by many family members and friends. I'm not going to name them all, but I'm joined by 2 of my closest friends from childhood. I am joined by friends from law school, friends from my time at the Justice Department. I have colleagues from Greenberg-Traurig who are here, and 5 of my former law clerks are with me today. I'm also joined by nieces, nephews, cousins. 2 of my sisters are here this morning, and the pride and joy of my entire life, my 14-year-old daughter, is here. I know that there are a few watch parties in Miami, including one in my chambers where my court family has assembled. But my strongest support might be in sitting in my childhood home back in East Hialeah, where more of my nieces and nephews, also there to help my parents, and my new baby grandniece have joined my mom and my dad to watch this morning's hearing. Along with my grandparents, my mom and my dad left Cuba shortly after the Communist Revolution. In the face of immeasurable loss, they worked tirelessly to rebuild their lives, rooted in faith, love of family, and a deep respect for the country that welcomed them. But today, Senators, brings me back to my very first trip to D.C. I was 10 years old, and my grandfather, who was a janitor, saved up money to bring me to D.C. He was sure that if I saw how beautiful and grand this city was, I would be inspired to become a lawyer, or maybe even a judge. My grandfather was a man with a fifth-grade education. He didn't speak a word of English, and yet this country gave him the courage to dream that his granddaughter could be before you today. It is an honor to be here living out that dream, and I look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. Judge Damian?
Chair Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, good morning. It is such an honor to be here, and I thank you for scheduling this hearing. I'd like to thank my home state senators, Senator Rick Scott and Senator Marco Rubio, for their unwavering support of my nomination throughout this process. And a very special thank you to President Biden for having the faith and confidence in me and for this nomination, which is truly the honor and pride of my professional career. I'd like to take this opportunity to introduce you to some very special people in my life who are here today. First and foremost, the most important people in my life, my two kids, John and Giovanna, are here. John's a senior in high school, Giovanna's a junior in high school, so it's a very busy time for them, and I am so grateful that they were able to come and share in this experience with all of us. They are the loves of my life, and they make me proud every day to be able to call myself their mom. Also here are my parents, Carol and Vincent Damian, and my big brother, Chris Damian. I should tell you, I was raised in an Italian-American household. That meant that we were always surrounded by an abundance of love and support, and of course, lots of great food. And with that great food came many big meals filled with lively debates about every subject matter you can imagine. I think it was from all of those lively debates around the dinner table that I got my interest in the law. My parents are brilliant. Their brilliance is only exceeded by their love and support for me, and for that I am always grateful. And my brother, Chris, is one of my biggest cheerleaders, and I'm so happy he could be here with us today. Also here are some very dear friends. My very close friends and lawyers, Melanie Damian and Michelle Seskauer, are here to make sure that, as they told me, I don't mess up. And I have a little cheering squad that made it up from South Florida. I cannot name everyone, but I am very excited to have our little cheering squad back there for me. And last, but absolutely not least, I told you that I think my interest in the law probably came from those lively Italian-American family dinners. I am certain that my interest in becoming a judge came from my good fortune in clerking after law school for Ursula Ungaro. She's brilliant, and she was an excellent role model. She has turned out to be my mentor and very dear friend. Judge Ungaro recently retired, and as Chair Durbin mentioned, I am overjoyed that I am here because I've been nominated to fill her seat on the Southern District of Florida, and I'm so happy she could be here with us today. Lastly, I just want to say thank you to all of my colleagues who I know are watching in Judge Becerra's chambers, who are on the bench at the Southern District of Florida. They welcomed me to the court family with open arms, and for that I am grateful, particularly to my court staff, Olivia, Christian, and Johanna, and Manny. I know they're all watching, and I'm so grateful for all of them. Thank you all. I look forward to your questions.
Thanks, Judge Damian. Mr. Leibowitz?
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, and I'd like to thank the ranking member and all the senators of this committee for convening this hearing. I'd first like to thank President Biden for this nomination. I'm truly humbled and grateful. I'd like to thank my home state senators, Senator Marco Rubio has placed his trust and confidence in me throughout this process, and I'd like to thank Senator Scott as well for his support of my nomination. I've been extremely fortunate during my entire legal education and professional career to be surrounded by the best role models, judges that I clerked and appeared before, brilliant students and professors, wonderful prosecutors at the state and federal level, and law enforcement agents, and esteemed members of the bar and friends in South Florida for the last 12 years. But it is my family that has given me everything, and I cannot adequately express my love for them in words. Some of them are here with me today, and I'd like to briefly introduce them to the committee. First, my parents, Blossom and Edward Leibowitz. My attitude, my basic sense of justice, kindness comes from them. My sister Susie and her husband Seth are also here, and their boys, their young men, my nephews, are watching on their screens. Sitting with my mother is her older sister, my Aunt Irma. Mrs. Irma Brayman and her husband Norman have been like a second set of parents to me throughout my life. Every major twist in the road, they have been there, with me and for me, to be a part of their lives and the lives of their daughters, sons-in-law, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren means the world to me. My mother and father-in-law, now that Senator Booker, I think, has come in the room, the timing is perfect, from New Jersey, are here. And their children and my wonderful nieces and nephews and cousins on the Buckholtz, New Jersey, New York side are all watching this. My youngest son, Louis, is here, and he is representing his older sister and brother, Sophie and Mac, who are watching me from Texas and Arizona. I am so lucky and so proud to be their father. Last, my best friend, my amazing wife, Stacy, is here. She has always been here since I met her in Philadelphia so many years ago. She's a wonderful mother, she's a wonderful physician, she's a great friend to many across the country. None of this happens, none of this matters without her. I want to conclude by noting that I'm the beneficiary of the sacrifice of previous generations who arrived in this country in the late 1800s and the early 1900s. Eastern European Jews who came from places like Poland, Lithuania, and the Pale of Settlement. America is a miracle. America is a blessing. Mr. Chairman, the grandson of Jean and Seymour Leibowitz, of Sophie and Harry Miller, appears before the committee today. President Biden's nomination honors them most of all, and I thank the chair.
Thank you, Mr. Leibowitz. Judge Sneed.
Good morning, Senators. It is an honor to be here with you today. I want to thank President Joe Biden for the honor of this nomination. I want to thank my senators, Senator Marco Rubio and Senator Rick Scott. Thank you, Chairman Durbin, as well as Ranking Member Graham and this committee for holding this hearing. This is really the honor of a lifetime. I'm very grateful to have my family here with me today. My husband, Dr. Kevin B. Sneed, Dean of the College of Pharmacy at our university in Tampa, Florida. My husband has been my biggest supporter and my partner in everything since our days in high school together. Go Eagles. My son, Ryan Sneed, a recent college graduate who I am so proud of, is here with me today, and our daughter, Asha Sneed, a junior in college who took time away from presiding over her own honor council meeting to be here with me today. I'm very proud of you as well. I'm very thankful also to have all of my siblings here with me. My brothers, Daryl and John Woods, my sister Sonia Cambridge, as well as my sister-in-law Cassandra Woods, and my nieces Julia Cambridge, Cameron Woods, as well as Joshua Woods, are all here with me today. I do want to thank my family members who are also watching from home and all of my friends who are watching from online.
Thank you for your support. Thank you for your friendship. And thank you for your prayers. Keep them coming. I also want to recognize my wonderful court family in the Middle District of Florida, my law clerks, Drew Domina, as well as Paige Tucker, and all of my prior law clerks. I appreciate all that you do to help the administration of justice. Senators, thank you again for this opportunity.
Thank you, Judge Sneed. Mr. Sheriff?
Thank you, Chairman Durbin, Ranking Member Graham, and the other members of the committee for the privilege of appearing before you today. I would like to thank President Biden for the confidence placed in me through this nomination. I would be honored to serve in the Eastern District of California, where I grew up and where I've raised my family and practiced for over 2 decades. I would like to thank Senator Padilla for recommending my nomination and for his kind words of introduction. I thank Senator Butler also for her support of my nomination and her kind introduction. And I also acknowledge my appreciation for the late Senator Feinstein's support. I would like to introduce and thank the family members who are here with me today. My mother, Susan, is joined by her husband, Rick. She and my father became parents at 18 when I was born, and I saw their efforts over many years to obtain their educations. She taught my sisters and me the importance of hard work and the value of education. I would like to thank my wife, Samia, who has been my partner for the past 30 years since we met in law school. I'm filled with gratitude for her support and encouragement. Our 3 sons, Zain, Rumi, and Zarin, are here today taking time from work, graduate school, and high school, and they know how proud I am of each of them. My sister-in-law and brother-in-law, Summer and Dennis, are also joining us today with my nephew. I would also like to acknowledge and thank those watching remotely. My father, Jim, and his wife, Rona, my sisters and their families, and other family, friends, and colleagues. It has been an honor to represent the United States for over 20 years. I would like to thank my current and former colleagues at the U.S. Attorney's Office and partner agencies and recognize their commitment to public service. I also acknowledge and thank Chief Justice Deborah Ports from New Jersey and my former colleagues in private practice for the opportunities they provided to me early in my career. And with that, I welcome the committee's questions.
Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. I'm going to start by asking questions, 5 minutes that's been allotted. And I'm going to tell you what the question is that will be asked of each of you. And the toughest part is you have to answer in a brief manner. That's hard for, almost impossible for senators, and I'm sure very difficult for judges as well. But the question is, who's the one person in your life who was an inspiration, a role model, or a mentor that you think is more responsible than anyone for your sitting at this table? And while you're thinking about your answer, it has to be brief. I just want to add, I'm not going into a long question about the cases that you've presided over or clients you've represented. You have gone through not only the White House scrutiny, you've gone through the American Bar Association scrutiny. They have found every single one of you well qualified, and I accept that decision and don't quarrel with it. Then you went through the scrutiny of both Democrats and Republicans on this committee that brought you to this table. So congratulations for sitting in those chairs. I wish you the best. And Judge Austin, your answer to my question?
Yes, Chairman Durbin. Judge Matthew Perry would have to be my biggest influence in my legal career. He was not only a consummate jurist, he was the epitome of grace, dignity, respect, thoughtfulness on the bench. He made sure that everyone that came before him understood that they were going to have a fair trial, fair hearing in front of him, and that he was going to give them his full attention and make whatever decision he made with all due diligence. And I hope that I can replicate his characteristics as a judge if I'm so confirmed.
Thank you, Judge. Judge Becerra?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I'm going to beg your indulgence and not make it just one person. I'm going to say that my parents certainly are the greatest influence. I think when you grow up with people who believe that you can do anything, at some point you start believing that maybe you can. So for me, it's my mom and my dad.
Thank you. Judge Damian?
Thank you, Chair Durbin. Well, this is hard because I have all these people behind me, and I feel bad if I don't name one of them. Certainly, professionally, as I already mentioned, and she's here, so I'm not, going to say otherwise, but it is true that professionally, Judge Ungaro, for whom I clerked and who is my mentor, was really my inspiration to get to this point. And just briefly, I always tell everybody on my first day of clerking, this tells you about her breadth of knowledge and my experience there. On my first day of clerking, she was death qualifying a jury for the first federal death penalty trial in the Southeast United States, for which 5 defendants were on trial. At the same time, we were preparing, and that's what I walked into, for a 6-month-long commodities fraud class action trial. Somehow she managed to understand and master both at the same time. That was my inspiration for being here today.
Thank you. Mr. Leibowitz?
Chair Durbin, my answer starts the same way Judge Becerra's did. It would be my parents. I was born in Miami. I was raised in Tampa, Florida. And in all my life, complete strangers would come up to me in Tampa and just say, oh, well, you're Blossom Leibowitz's son. She's the nicest person I've ever met. And I'm obviously biased, Mr. Chairman, but I mean, that happened to me regularly. And her sense of kindness, her sense of decency, if I am so fortunate to be confirmed, it is her decency and it is her disposition that would take the bench. And my father, it's a pretty similar story, but a different trait. Anyone that dealt with him in business, he was straight, he was honest, he was candid, and he was he didn't suffer fools, but he did things a certain way, but you knew where you stood with Ed Leibowitz. And as a son, that teaches you something about how you proceed in the world. So I thank you for letting me say that to you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you for saying it. Judge Sneed?
Yes, I would say my mother, my grandmother, and my great-grandmother. I know that's 3 people. But, they each really were just such strong individuals. I was raised by a family of matriarchs. None of them attended college, and, they weren't wealthy, but they were full of passion, determination, and optimism. They worked incredibly hard and really provided a stable foundation for their family and gave us family values that I carry with me here today.
Thank you. Mr. Sheriff?
Thank you, Senator. Unequivocally, my mother. I, growing up, saw how hard she worked to support the family while earning her education over many years, and the value of that she put into or demonstrated for me and my sisters was unequivocally the motivation for me to go on and do the things that I've done.
Thank you. Senator Graham?
Do all of you have children? Who's your favorite? And why? No, we won't do that. So, Judge Austin, Thanksgiving must be interesting with your clan, all these engineers. I'm very impressed by your family history. It's just amazing. What made you want to be a lawyer?
I'll make this story short. I was working as an engineer at VC Summer Nuclear Station, and when I started, SCE&G was suing Westinghouse for problems with steam generators with the warranties, and none of the engineers wanted to work with the lawyers on the discovery issues that they needed, so they stuck me with the lawyers, and I ended up absolutely loving it, and felt like I could, help with knowing what they needed, and a lot of times I would bring them information that they didn't even ask for. So they told me, you're pretty good at this. Why don't you go to law school? So that's how I ended up applying to law school.
Well, I'm glad you did, and congratulations to your family and all your families. Ms. Sheriff, you present a dilemma for me. You seem like really a qualified guy. You've served in the U.S. Attorney's Office for how many years?
Over 20 years, Senator.
You've been a prosecutor, right?
Yes.
You did civil litigation?
Early in the career, I did 5 years in the civil division, and since then, I've been a prosecutor in the criminal division.
You've been in federal court a lot, I would take it.
Yes, Senator.
How many jury trials do you think?
I've tried, I believe, approximately 10 criminal trials and 2 federal civil jury trials.
Yeah, most things get settled, but you've been in the courtroom, right? Why'd you join the ACLU in 2019? Is that right or not right?
So, Senator, I've given small contributions
Which is
starting
fine.
that year, and my understanding is they consider contributors to be members, and that's why I listed it accordingly.
Okay. So I could ask you everything about the ACLU and we'd be here all day. I don't agree with a lot of it. Some of it I actually do. Like the idea of not having police officers in schools seems to offend the ACLU. Do you know why that is?
I don't, Senator.
Does it offend you? You're
well,
a parent.
No, it does not offend me. I've spoken actually at like introductory remarks at a school safety symposium that brought together educators and law enforcement on the topic of dealing with active shooter situations and other school safety situations. And I believe I specifically commented on the importance of coordination in that area in any event between law enforcement and educators.
And I think the ACLU openly advocates for people to try to avoid interacting with ICE agents who are doing their job to enforce immigration laws. I mean, the idea of obeying the law, whether you agree with it or not, does that make sense to you?
It does, Senator. I completely believe in the rule of law, that it's fundamental, and obviously our immigration laws, like other laws, should be fully enforced.
What would you want to say to the ICE agents and their families out there right now? How do you view them in our society?
Well, our office works closely with them on criminal immigration cases under 8 U.S.C. 1326. And like other federal law enforcement officers, I greatly respect the work that the officers do every day, putting themselves on the line and working a lot of hours that aren't compensated to do what needs to be done in public service.
You're from Berkeley, right?
I grew up in the Eastern District of California. I was born in Berkeley, but that's in the Northern District, and I
good.
never really
That
lived
was a
there.
good answer. I mean, nothing wrong with Berkeley, I'm sure. Just on our side, it doesn't ring a lot of good bells, but that's okay, you know. Tell the conservative members, given who you are and where you come from, why would you be a good judge?
Senator, I've committed to over 20 years in public service, upholding the rule of law, and one of the things that is fundamental and been important clearly in that has been evaluating cases fairly and objectively in the office, both as a line prosecutor and as a supervisor, where I've reviewed north of 1,000 indictments, many of them multi-defendant indictments. And I have absolute commitment to the rule of law and following precedent, and would do that rigorously in any case that came before me.
Senator Hirono?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to all of you, and welcome to your families and friends. I ask the following two initial questions of all nominees who come before any of the committees on which I sit. I'm sure you are aware already. So we'll just start with Judge Austin and go down the line. Since you became a legal adult, have you ever made unwanted requests for sexual favors or committed any verbal or physical harassment or assault of a sexual nature?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
Have you ever faced discipline or entered into a settlement related to this kind of conduct?
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
No, Senator.
For Judge Sneed, you have spoken a number of times on the importance of diversity on the bench, and you've stated diversity in the judiciary can help eliminate disparities that exist in sentencing and in the disposition of cases generally. Can you tell us why diverse representation on the bench is necessary for a fair judicial system?
Diversity is really an important foundation to help promote fairness and equity, as well as the administration of justice. It also just gives individuals that come before the court confidence in the court. When the court is representative and it looks like the people that come before the court, that increases confidence in the judiciary and the judicial process.
Well, clearly, I am a person who understands how important representation is, and the expectation that I have for each of you is that regardless of your background, et cetera, well, of course you bring your life experiences to the bench, but that you will address the cases before you fairly and objectively. For Judge Damien, in the early 2000s, you volunteered to help children in foster care, which led to your co-founding a program called Educate Tomorrow. I understand that this program has helped place more than 1,000 foster care youth and education programs, including college and vocational programs. Can you tell us more about the philosophy behind Educate Tomorrow and how it works?
Sure, and thank you for recognizing the organization, Senator Hirono. Educate Tomorrow really started because my sister-in-law, who is here, was the guardian ad litem for some children who had been removed from their mother, and she was trying to assist the family in helping these kids with educational opportunities, and she got a few of her friends involved, including me. We learned as we studied the predicament of those kids, the staggering number of people who are in the foster care system when they age out of foster care and there is no support for them. They end up in homelessness and, unfortunately in the criminal justice system. We were really just in a negative way impressed by those dramatic numbers. And we started working to assist kids who are in the foster care program to find opportunities when they aged out of the foster care program, specifically focusing on education. And, just to jump through a very long story, at the end of the day, we found that the state of Florida has a scholarship fund set up for kids who are in the foster care system to go to college at a state school, completely funded by the state of Florida scholarship. And that is why we have such great numbers of kids who have now gone on to college with a full ride.
Do you know if there are any other jurisdictions that have created this kind of program? Because I agree with you that when foster kids age out, there's very little continuity of support.
So the program has been working with people in other states to kind of broaden. Mm-hmm. The nice thing is, because we've had so many graduates, those kids then, they're kids, they turn into adults, right? They go on wherever they are and they try and create the same sort of program. Specifically, I know that we're working in Colorado to set up a similar program. And yes, they've spoken to representatives in many other states to try and encourage them to do the same thing.
Thank you very much for your commitment. I was intrigued, I am running out of time, Mr. Leberworth, about your PhD dissertation on how judges should behave sincerely, not strategically. Can you explain very briefly in 4 seconds what you meant by that?
Yeah, it's actually a welcome invitation to be very short, because otherwise it could be a cure for insomnia, Senator. So it was an opportunity to study how appellate courts behave in England and in the United States. Very briefly, there was a big change in 1801. Up until 1801 in the United States, when an appellate court issued an opinion, it issued the opinion seriatim. It's still done that way in the House of Lords. In 1801, Chief Justice Marshall changed it to the opinion of the court, and therefore institutional rules developed as a result of that. And at that point, I think I'm too long. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Hirono. Senator Lee.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thanks to all of you for being here. Mr. Leibowitz, I'd like to start with you. I assume you'd agree with me that the federal government is one of limited enumerated powers, correct?
That's correct, Senator Lee.
And To the extent that any one of the enumerated powers granted to Congress is limitless, then the 10th Amendment is meaningless, right? I mean, if Congress can do everything, then there's not much reserved for the states. A few years ago, you wrote a law review article criticizing the Supreme Court's opinion in United States versus Morrison. As you'll know, it's one of only 2 instances in which the Supreme Court has struck down a statute as being enacted in excess of Congress's authority under the Commerce Clause. It did so based on a conclusion that the activity regulated in that case, acts of violence, were non-economic in nature. They were bare intrastate, non-commercial activity occurring in one state at one time, not part of any interstate commercial transaction, and not part of any channel or instrumentality of interstate commerce. You derided that decision as an instance of conservative judicial activism. You also said that it was a problem. You strongly disagreed with it. Can you tell me if you disagreed with the holding in Morrison, and the holding specifically that the Commerce Clause power can't apply to bare, intrastate, non-commercial acts of violence in that instance? What remains beyond Congress's reach under the Commerce Clause?
Senator, I thank you for the question. As you know from the question, let me start with the article. The article was written in 2000. It was written after Morrison and after Lopez. Those were the first 2 decisions since 1937.
The only 2?
Yes, sir. Yes, Senator. The only 2 since 1937 where the court struck down acts of Congress as beyond the commerce power. Lopez in 1995 was a very important decision because it was the first one. And to supplement what you said, Senator, there were 3 grounds why they struck down Lopez. There was non-economic activity. There was, does it invade a traditional state function? There was, what are the findings of Congress? Well, in Morrison, so there were 3 reasons why they struck it down in Lopez. Morrison, viewed by everyone, whether you agreed with the decision or not, really relied on the first one because Congress made explicit findings, voluminous findings in Morrison. The statute itself that was struck down was a civil rights statute, a civil liability statute, not something traditionally reserved to the states. So although you used the word that I criticized with my co-author, Morrison, we really didn't.
Wait, you're saying acts of violence are not historically reserved, covered by state law? I mean, tort law?
Senator, you're certainly correct the way—
Criminal law?
Yes, Senator, you're certainly correct the way you just stated it. That is state law. But the Violence Against Women Act, the provision that was struck down, was a civil liability provision that was akin to civil rights laws that were passed by this body. Civil rights laws like cases that were upheld in Katzenbach versus McClung and others. My only point, Senator, is that I don't think it's fair to say that my co-author and I were criticizing Morrison. We wrote at a time.
Well, it's generally regarded as criticism when you call it an act of judicial conservative activism. That's not a compliment.
I don't think that phrase is in keeping with the article. What I would agree with you, Senator, in saying is that the Supreme Court in 1995 and the Supreme Court in 2000 started to get more formalist in their categories. And in 2005, after we wrote the article, in Gonzalez versus Raich, the court did not go that far. They did not continue on the path that we were talking about.
Yeah, but Gonzalez versus Raich involved a different category, involved something, exchange of a contraband item for which there's an established interstate commercial market. And therefore it couldn't be regulated adequately absent comprehensive control by national authority. That's very different. By contrast, here's what you said in the article. This is an excerpt from it. Quote, if the court finds that all federal regulations of non-economic activity are equally precluded from the Constitution's limitations on congressional power, then such a decision would so violate social expectations and needs that it would likely require the court to turn to a different approach in order to define commerce power in a way that's consistent with the 4 corners of the Constitution and the pressing needs of growing a national and international society. I'm not sure what that means. I'm not sure what provision of the Constitution allows us to modify the terms of the Constitution based on social expectations and needs, or on the pressing needs of a growing national and international society. Moreover, the minute you open up the Commerce Clause to being applicable to bare intrastate non-commercial activity outside the scope of civil rights legislation enacted in 1964, which just as easily could have been defended as an exercise of Section 5 of the 14th Amendment, you're in dangerous territory. NFIB versus Sebelius doesn't count because the court went on to rewrite the law not just once but twice in order to save it from an otherwise inevitable finding of unconstitutionality. I don't understand what your approach is. How would you have written Morrison?
Mr. Chair, if I'm allowed to answer, Senator, if I'm allowed to answer with the time, I appreciate the question. I think I would have said this. There's a lot in your question, Senator. Let me first assure you that there is nothing in that article that should give, I believe, any member of this committee any pause that I will follow the law. If Morrison's the law, I'll follow it.
Yeah, I'm not doubting that. I want to know the answer to my question.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So let me take that. And that's why I thought it was important that I said that we wrote it in 2001. After cases like Gonzalez versus Raich in 2005 and others, as you know, part of your question is that the court was seriously considering abandoning, Justice Thomas and others were thinking about abandoning the substantial effects test. That part of the Commerce Clause. I know, just having heard your question, Senator, that the substantial effects test bumps up against the 10th Amendment all the time. What I would say is...
Well, it swallows the 10th Amendment.
I take your...
But they didn't get rid of that. That's why I'm trying to understand what your analysis is here.
That's right. So what I would say is that after 2005 and other cases, the court has not abandoned the substantial effects test. And if I was so fortunate to be confirmed as a district court judge, I would follow what the Supreme Court and the 11th Circuit say. They allow, in certain cases, when evaluating acts of Congress, to determine whether they substantially affect interstate commerce. That is currently my understanding of the law, and I would follow it. But let me assure you, Senator, I think my background as an assistant United States attorney for 12 years, I think my background just as a lawyer in Miami, I don't think that you should have that your question, if it has a concern that I would be some roving judge that would take the commerce power and swallow the 10th Amendment whole, I would respectfully suggest that I would do nothing of the sort.
I get that. I just don't want somebody interpreting the Constitution based on growing societal needs instead of the text of the Constitution. Thank you.
Senator Padilla.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and greetings to all the nominees today. I'll begin my questions by asking, as I do for all nominees that come before us, by asking about diversity in our federal courts, and specifically diversity amongst law clerks, for all the same reasons we value and are working to improve diversity of those who sit on the bench. And broadly diverse, right? I want to make sure we're inclusive of life experience and professional experience. It makes for a stronger judiciary. But when I speak specifically about clerks, it's because, as most of you know, a quality clerk experience is an opportunity for young lawyers to not just do some good learning on the job, but to receive some high-quality mentorship. And often a quality clerkship experience is a first step towards a very successful career in top levels of the legal profession, whether it's in public service or in private practice. But too often, if history is any indicator, too often these opportunities are not equally available to people of color or to women, despite these young lawyers having equal qualifications for jobs as clerks and beyond. So I'd like to hear from each of you if you agree with my premise that diversity in all its forms helps strengthen the federal judiciary, number one. If you don't, give me your reasons. But if you do, then please share, if you're fortunate enough to be confirmed, what you might do proactively to advance diversity in your courtroom. And we'll start with Judge Austin.
Yes, Senator Padilla. I absolutely agree that diversity is important in particularly in chambers, the diversity of ideas, thought, just thinking of things differently. My two law clerks are here with me today, and they're a lot younger than I am. So a lot of times their thoughts are, more in line with what's going on in the world today than maybe mine are. So just having conversations and being able to allow them to disagree with me. They have no problem overturning me in chambers, and I have no problem with that either. But I do also agree that having diverse candidates as clerks is important. I know it was important in my life. I got to clerk for a district judge, and from there, I know opportunities open for me that probably would not have been open if I had not clerked for a judge. So I'm definitely committed to opening up that opportunity to minority clerks, diverse clerks in my chambers as well.
Thank you. Judge Becerra.
Thank you very much, Senator Padilla. I don't have a lot of regrets in my career, but one of them is that I never clerked. And I didn't even realize how important clerking was and how much it could shape your career until I was a judge and hired law clerks. I do think that diversity in all aspects is important in your chambers, because I do think that it enhances public confidence in the judiciary. I also think it's important to have diverse experiences. Just like Judge Austin, my clerks are younger, and they have different perspectives and have different life experiences, which I always appreciate. And I also think it's important, not just with the law clerks. I have lots of interns. I have interns every semester. I have interns in the summer. The more people in chambers, I think, the better. I reflect that I think it's difficult to become something you've never seen. I, for example, in my entire career only appeared before a judge that was like me once, and that was in 25 years of law practice. So the more that as a chambers we can be out there touching the community and touching young lawyers, I think that's very important.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. I do agree that diversity in chambers and on the bench is important. I did clerk, and it was a springboard to a very successful career. And I certainly believe that my experience clerking not only opened doors for me, because it's impressive on your resume, there's no question, for law firms. And, your judge usually is able to, people take the call when the judge calls. So they're able to help you through your path. For me, I want to make sure that all different individuals from different backgrounds, and when I have a different background, I mean not just racial, socioeconomic, ethnicity, but also I like to see law clerks from different, with a business degree, with a philosophy degree, from a different law school, from a different state. All forms of diversity enrich my chambers, my practice, and also hopefully enriches the legal practice in our community, because now we've got these individuals with this background going into these hopefully very successful careers.
Senator Padilla, I completely agree with the prior comments in whole, and I would also add, during the last 12 years, I've been the general counsel and chief legal officer of a very large business that operates in 2 states, and I think that not only do I agree with everything that you said, Senator, I think that my own practice, what I've seen, we would hurt our company if we did not consider everything that you said. And I think, I hope that if people evaluated my last 12 years, they would say that I actually acted that way in the importance of diversity and giving everyone a fair shot, and not just racial diversity or national diversity, but all kinds of diversity. Let me add one last thing, which is I think that your comments not only apply to clerkships and interns, if I am so fortunate to be a judge, I think it also applies to receiverships, special masters. I think that the public doesn't, at least when I was in New York practicing as a prosecutor, judges have a tremendous amount of power to simply anoint someone and say, you're the head of the class. And I think that when you're thinking about the kinds of things that your question asks, I think that it applies to that as well. Thank you, Senator.
I totally agree. I am very supportive of diversity in the legal profession. I've given a lot of talks throughout the course of my professional career talking about the importance of diversity, diversity on the bench, and also, again, diversity in the legal profession. It is important to not only have the idea that you want to promote diversity, but to go out into the classrooms, to go out into the universities, and to go out into the law school specifically to talk about the importance of diversity and also having those clerkships. I don't think, in my experience, the clerkship opportunities are promoted as much as they could possibly be among people who are diverse, and so that is something that I do make a point to do, to go out and work to really, sadly, sell the importance of clerkships. It is a wonderful experience. I, too, am the beneficiary of clerkships. Judge James Whittemore, and Judge Chris Altenburn, those are now my lifelong mentors, and they really, have just given me so much in terms of my professional career, and I work to do the same thing. I try not to meddle too much into my law clerks' lives, but I just, I adore them, and I really want to see them be successful. And it's something that I think is unique to clerkships. And the only other thing I'd add is it's important to have those interns as well. Not only the law clerks, but you do need to have the interns so that they can groom their professional career, groom their experience in law school, and work to tailor it so that they can be competitive in getting a clerkship.
Senator, I also entirely agree with your premise. I think diversity of backgrounds and experiences makes, having folks from diverse backgrounds and experiences makes our institutions, including the judiciary, stronger. I think it enhances public confidence in the judiciary. And in terms of law clerks, I benefited from the opportunity to have a clerkship early in my career, and I saw how much that helped me, and I recognize how that can advance folks. I certainly feel, first, that diversity background and experience among law clerks would be important and contribute in an extremely positive way to the work of chambers. I also think that outreach to students and schools that to ensure that we're getting the wide range of applicants from different backgrounds and experience would encourage diversity in that context with law clerks.
Thank you all very much.
Thank you, Senator Padilla. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Sheriff, I'm a little confused by some of the answers, but let me ask Senator Padilla's question a different way. In choosing a law clerk, do you believe that a law clerk applicant's race should be used to harm that person?
Neither to harm nor benefit, Senator. I believe that applicants should be considered based on their background and experience.
So you don't think a person's race should be used to harm them?
Correct, Senator.
Do you think a person's race should be used to help them?
Not in that context, Senator, no.
Okay. Raise your hand, please, for me if you're a member, a dues-paying member of the American Bar Association. So 2 out of 6 are members. Judge Bissert, why aren't you a member?
Senator, I was a member for many years of the American Bar Association.
Why'd you get out?
Honestly, Senator, when I was a member, my law firm paid the dues.
Yeah.
And so I don't pay the dues for the American Bar Association, but I was very involved.
Find it irrelevant and not worth the money?
No, sir. As you know from my record, I actually co-chaired the section of litigation for a number of years, and I thought it was very beneficial as a lawyer.
But it wasn't important enough to you to pay yourself?
It wasn't so much that, Senator. It's just that many of the benefits of the American Bar Association, at least for judges, I'm already participating in what the administrative offices provide with training, which is really what I was doing as a lawyer.
So it was beneficial to you if somebody else paid for it?
No, sir. It's just that as a lawyer, I used it primarily for legal education.
Okay.
And as a judge,
I don't want to spend too much time on this. Just for the record, 2 out of 6 of our nominees today have chosen to be dues-paying members of the American Bar Association. Mr. Sheriff, how long have you been a member of the ACLU?
Senator, I believe I first contributed in 2019.
And how much money have you given them?
I believe it's approximately $100, $120
And
a year. I'm sorry.
A year?
Yes.
Okay. And why did you first decide to contribute to them?
Senator, I contribute to
Just briefly.
charitable organizations. They work on First Amendment issues.
Yeah. Now, you're a member of the ACLU of Southern California.
That's correct.
All right. A couple years ago, the ACLU of Southern California put out a statement. They said that U.S. policing has, quote, historical roots in slave patrols, close quote. And the ACLU chapter of Southern California went on to say that police presence has, quote, devastating and discriminatory impacts on tens of thousands of California students, close quote. You agree with that?
Senator, I'm not familiar with that letter. I have never seen that letter.
But I just read it to you. You agree with what that letter said?
I don't have information relevant to that.
You don't agree with it, or you do agree with it?
I can talk to my experience in law enforcement.
So I'm asking you if you agree or disagree with the statement of an organization that you chose to join.
Right, Senator.
As an assistant United States attorney.
I understand, Senator. I would have to know a lot more about where that comes from in order to evaluate it.
Well, you're not doubting that I'm reading it to you accurately, are you?
No, I'm not, but I don't know what the basis for that information is.
The ACLU of Southern California also put out another statement. They said, quote, ICE is not welcome here, close quote. Do you agree with that statement?
Senator, nearly 20 years in my practice in the Eastern District of California, the office has worked closely with ICE.
Do you agree with that statement?
Certainly, in terms of federal law enforcement, ICE is welcome, and we work closely with.
Maybe I'm not being clear. Do you agree or disagree with the statement that ICE should be welcome in California?
I believe that ICE carries out a legitimate
legitimate
function under federal law.
I understand. Give me one more minute, Mr. Chairman. Let me ask Mr. Leibowitz. I want to ask you, it's a constitutional question. I think we now understand that there's some people in America, and I dare say many of our college students and college professors, who believe, my words, not theirs, but this is what I see, who believe in diversity, equity, inclusion, and the right to kill Jews. To what extent is that point of view protected by the Constitution, and what, if any, limits are there on that point of view?
Senator, I very much appreciate the question, especially the times that we're living in. First, as your former colleague and now the president of one of the great universities in this country, the University of Florida, said, the First Amendment gives people the absolute right to be abject moral idiots. And Senator Ben Sasse, now President Sasse.
So does the Senate.
So I take part of your question that Since October the 7th, I think part of what you were saying is that people are taking full advantage of their First Amendment rights. And the basic dividing line in answering your question, as I understand the court's precedents and the First Amendment, is that there's a very big difference between speech and conduct. There's a very big difference between things like Title VI, Title VII.
Let me stop you because I don't want to go too far over.
Yes.
I think you've made the correct distinction between speech and conduct. If I could have just 30 more seconds. Could the U.S. Department of Education, if a college professor crosses that line between speech and conduct, could President Biden's Department of Education withhold their federal funding?
Senator, I'm going to only be able to quickly answer part of your question. First of all, I do believe that part of the way you phrased it, I'm precluded from answering it because of the canons of judicial ethics, because there are live cases now and live statements now, as I understand it. There are live cases being brought under federal law tracking exactly what you're saying, and I'm not sure if the President's Department of Education wants to weigh into that or not, but if they did and that case came before me, I wouldn't want my comments today to be viewed as prejudging them.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Whitehouse.
Let me start by thanking the chairman and the ranking member for guiding us to this successful operation of the Senate District Court blue slip. When we undid the Circuit Court blue slip, I predicted that we would regret that decision, and obviously I've heard expressions of regret in this hearing about that decision. For the blue slip to work, there has to be good faith, there has to be some degree of reciprocity, and there has to be willingness to work together from the White House and the members of the Senate. So it's not always easy, and to have this success today, I think, is significant and worth mentioning and putting a highlighter mark by. The topic that interests me with respect to district judges is the jury, and particularly the civil jury. Criminal cases come with a pretty solid jury requirement. Civil jury cases is a little bit more difficult. So many of them are encouraged to settle. Magistrates very often exist for the purposes of fending off trials for the judge. But the observation of people much smarter than me has been that the civil jury is not just a fact-finding appendage to a trial judge, but is actually an important part of the American constitutional system of governance. And we've seen it, we've seen honest courtrooms come through for people in very important ways recently, where people with loud megaphones and bullying voices have used those forces to harm people who really couldn't push back until they got into an honest courtroom. And then suddenly there were major awards against big corporations and major awards against people who had assaulted individuals. And I think a very important part of that is having a civil jury. You can't really get to a civil jury. They're only there for that one case, and then they disappear again. If you try to get to them in that one case, it's actually a crime. And that means that there's a fresh, untainted government decider, not subject to massive amounts of influence, political contributions, super PAC pressures, and all of the rest of it. So I just would like to take a quick minute with each of you to emphasize that point and to see if you have any quarrel with that notion. And right now, there are judges who are kind of taking it on as their cause to try to save and protect the civil jury. We went through a period in Rhode Island where our district court went 3 years without a civil jury trial. Mercifully, that's passed, but I think it's very important that we protect that institution by use. And just want to make sure you're all on board with that. And if you can just go quickly across, I've got 1 minute and 20 seconds that gives you 20 seconds each.
Yes, Senator, I absolutely believe that juries are a basic tenet of our justice system. Just the diversity of ideas, the jury of your peers coming to a decision just is absolutely important to our system of justice.
Magistrate Becerra.
Senator, I was a civil litigator for many years, and both as a lawyer and a judge. Thank you. Both as a lawyer and a judge, I have the utmost respect for the protections of the Seventh Amendment of the Constitution, which guarantee a jury trial in civil proceedings. I think that what we can do as judges, and I think I do this already as a magistrate judge, is try to give the parties some predictability on scheduling, which often is an issue for private parties. They can't get to the trial quickly enough. And so I think that's something that we can do. As a magistrate, for example, when I handle discovery matters, I handle them on a motionless calendar to try to deal with the expense of litigation and the time in litigation. And so I do think there are things that we can and should be doing within the bounds of the rules to make sure that people who want to go to trial in a civil case can.
I think in the service of the clock, I'll have to close out with Magistrate Damian.
Thank you. Well, I will say that I agree wholeheartedly with Magistrate Judge Becerra. I also was a civil litigator. I think that part of the issue may very well be the expense and the timing, and I am very interested in the issue. There's been a lot of committees formed in the Southern District of Florida to try and figure out why more civil cases are not going to jury trial. The Seventh Amendment provides for it, and I will tell you this. Every time that I've been involved in a jury trial, if you talk to the jurors afterwards, all those people who tried to get out of their jury service with some silly excuse, afterwards, they are all so grateful that they did it. They love the experience. And, I'm with you. If we can find a way to try and make jury trials more common in civil cases, we should work on that.
Well, that's been my experience with jurors and grand jurors alike. So thank you, Chairman.
Thanks, Senator Whitehouse. Senator Blackburn.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations to each of you and to your families and friends that are all here. I know it's a big day, and we appreciate your time. Judge Becerra, I want to come with you. You had a membership in the American Constitution Society from 2009 to 2010, correct?
I did.
Great. I've asked a previous nominee about their membership, so I'd like to ask you to get you on the record about this. I want to read you a portion of the mission statement from the ACS website. It states that ACS's mission includes redressing, and I quote, the founding failures of our Constitution and enduring inequities in our laws in pursuit of realized equality, end quote. So in your role as an advocate and now as a magistrate judge, do you subscribe to that part of the mission statement? And what do you see as the enduring inequities in our laws that need to be redressed?
So thank you for the question, Senator Blackburn. As you noted, I'm no longer a member of the ACS. I was a member of the ACS for a short period of time. It may not surprise you to know that I was a high school debater. And some friends of mine who are old high school debaters wanted to start a chapter in Miami to encourage debate and debate on legal questions. That didn't really go so well. We weren't very successful. And then after that, I went back to tend to the business of my law firm.
Do you subscribe to the mission statement? That's what I'm asking you.
So, Senator, I'm not familiar with their mission statement today. Okay. I haven't kept up
so
with it.
So you joined but did not notice the mission statement?
Senator, I'm not even sure if that was the mission statement back 15 years ago.
Right. We will, that is their recorded statement. So do you see enduring inequities in our laws?
Senator, what I know is enduring about our laws is the Constitution and the values and the rights that are in the Constitution. And as a sitting magistrate judge, that is what I honor.
All right. Let me move on with you. I want to ask you about some comments that you defended, comments that Justice Sotomayor made. And Justice O'Connor once said that a wise old man and a wise old woman would reach the same conclusion in deciding cases. And I agree with that. Justice Sotomayor did not. So in response to Justice O'Connor, she went so far as to say, and I'm quoting her, "I would hope that a wise Latina woman with the richness of her experiences would more often than not reach a better conclusion than a white male who hasn't lived that life," end quote. So you defended those comments by saying they were taken out of context, but I've given you the full sentence. So I'd like to know, do you think the law is subjective? Do you think that you should be ruling on the rule of law? Do you think that a judge's experiences should weigh into the decision that they make?
Senator, I think that a judge's role, and the role that I have played for the last 5 years, is to look at the facts honestly and scrupulously, to be a student of the law, and to apply the facts to the law in an impartial way. I don't believe a judge's personal opinion or personal opinions should affect that.
Okay, do you regret having defended that statement?
I don't believe I defended the statement. I think what was happening at the time is she had just been nominated. I had been asked.
All right, let me move on. I've got 1 minute then. I want to ask you about sentencing guidelines, and reading some of these things in the background, I was a little bit concerned if you had felt things should be subjectively done, if you felt like there were inequities in the law. You can see, looking at your background, where I would come up with some of that. So we had a nominee recently, a judge, Mr. Aframe, and he had refused to follow sentencing guidelines in a horrific child pornography case. The guidelines recommended a life in prison sentence, and he chose to go for a 60-year sentence. And to me, that would be a disqualifier. It is a disqualifier. This is someone I will not vote for. Is there any scenario where you would deviate from sentencing guidelines recommendation of life imprisonment for a lower sentence?
So, Senator, the factors of 3553 are very clear, and those are what I will follow. The sentencing guidelines, of course, are no longer mandatory, but how we apply them is guided by the precedent of the 11th Circuit, and that is what I would follow. When I was a prosecutor many years ago here in the District of Columbia, the guidelines didn't apply here. And so I saw firsthand what some of the inequities could be when you didn't have the guidelines. And then, of course, I was a prosecutor in Miami for many years when the guidelines were mandatory. And so I've been a prosecutor in both of those scenarios. And so from my perspective, I think you follow the factors that you are allowed to follow, that you are told to follow by this body, and then you are guided by 11th Circuit precedent in how you determine those factors.
Okay, thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Blackburn, Senator Coons.
Thank you, Chairman Durbin. Thank you to all the nominees who are before us today, and to my colleagues who've engaged in a robust confirmation hearing process. I won't have time to question all of you, but I welcome and appreciate all of you. And Mr. Chairman, I understand you opened by referencing how this shows how the blue slip process can work, even in states where there are two senators who are of the opposite party as the president. I had a similarly positive experience in my home state under the previous administration. I'm glad that we are moving forward these nominees today, and I look forward to questioning a couple of you, if I might. Mr. Leibowitz, during your tenure as Assistant U.S. Attorney, you prosecuted racketeering, insider trading, securities fraud cases, among many others. If confirmed, how would your experience as a federal prosecutor inform your approach to the bench?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I was very fortunate to be a part of that office for 9 years. And I was very fortunate to be trusted by different U.S. attorneys to handle very serious and in some instances, very high-profile investigations and prosecutions. For the last 2 years, your question mentioned, I prosecuted insider trading that really, were signature cases for U.S. Attorney Preet Bharara. And I can tell you that that's why I started in my introduction by saying Felix Frankfurter was right. The best job that you can have coming right out of law school or shortly thereafter is to be an assistant United States attorney in the Southern District of New York, because you come across the finest people, the best examples, people that say that United States versus Berger really means something. And I think I would leave it there. You know, I know you know the Berger case. I can tell you we lived the Berger case in that office. I'm sure they do in other offices, but that was a really, really important part of my training.
Well, you're exceptionally well qualified, and I look forward to supporting your confirmation. Judge Becerra, some would say the best experience would be being an AUSA in the Southern District of Florida.
That's correct.
Having served as a federal prosecutor in both here in the District of Columbia and in the Southern District of Florida, I was interested in hearing you answer the same question, how your time as a federal prosecutor might inform your service on the bench. I also know you have taught at 2 different law schools, and you've taught legal writing. Often considered an oxymoron. How would that best prepare you for an important federal district courtship role where you would be interpreting and applying the law and hopefully writing accessible, concise, and important rulings in federal law?
I appreciate that question, Senator. And I will tell you, one of the experiences that I think goes hand in hand even more with being a prosecutor is having been a partner at a large law firm with clients. Because I've had the experience of having turned to a client and tried to explain what it is that the judge did and not have the ability to do so in a clear fashion because the opinion perhaps wasn't as written with the kind of clarity that the client would expect. And so I think those experiences have helped me and shaped me in terms of the kind of judge I've been and the kind of judge I hope to be on the district court. Certainly being an assistant United States attorney is a great honor. And doing it both in the District of Columbia, that has very unique challenges when you're a prosecutor here because you're essentially the role of a state prosecutor. So you're really in the day-to-day of how crime and how law enforcement is interacting day-to-day with people. And then I had almost the other experience in Miami where I was a major narcotics prosecutor, and I'm doing wiretaps and looking at much more sophisticated cases from a legal perspective. So I think that that experience will help me because certainly as a district court judge, I'll have a wide range of matters before me. And again, as to the writing, both being a professor and as well as being a partner at a law firm, I think teaches me that we're not just writing for each other, we're writing for the parties and we're writing for the public.
Thank you, Your Honor. If I might, one last question. So, Judge Austin, one of the things I find compelling about this very diverse panel is your legal experiences. That is, in my view, also a critical part of how we contribute to representing. You're a member of the Patent Bar, is that correct?
Yes, I am.
And you have also issued around 25,000 orders during your tenure as a magistrate judge?
I have.
If you would just briefly speak to the importance of having the skill, the discipline, the training required to be a member of the Patent Bar and your experience as a magistrate and how that prepares you to be a federal judge.
Yes, Senator. Well, to be a member of the Patent Bar, you have to have a scientific degree. And you also have to take an additional bar exam, Patent Bar. And the year I took the Patent Bar, I think the pass rate was like 30%. I passed it the first time, thank God. I didn't have to take it again. But prosecuting patent applications, I think, gave me a strong foundation for practicing law because it's a lot of attention to detail and being able to explain to a patent examiner in DC what your client in Greenville, South Carolina is trying to claim as an invention and what the bounds of that invention are, how it works, and how it's different from prior precedent, prior art. And so I believe that background gave me a strong foundation to be able to move into practicing law, which when I moved into practicing law, I was doing complex civil litigation as well as patent litigation. And I do believe that one of the main reasons that I was selected to be a magistrate judge 12 years ago was because I had the patent background and I could help the judges on the district court with the patent cases. And just interestingly, a lot of the patent cases that are filed there, the parties tend to consent to having me handle their cases. So to my law clerk chagrin, but I enjoy them.
As you may know, Judge Delaware is one of the very busiest patent jurisdictions in the country. So I'm encouraged to see a member of the patent bar ascend to the federal bench.
Thank you.
Whether it's as in-house counsel, as a federal prosecutor, as a professor, as a member of the patent bar, I just wanted to take a moment and highlight the remarkable range of qualifications and experiences all of you have. Thank you for your willingness to serve. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Kuhn. Senator Hawley.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Congratulations to all the nominees. Thank you for being here. Congratulations to your families. Mr. Sheriff, if I could just start with you, I wanted to follow up on a question or two that Senator Kennedy asked you, because I wasn't sure that I understood your answers, but I bet you can clear it up for me. Let me just come back to questions he asked you related to your membership in the ACLU, the Southern California chapter. I think we've established that you're a member there. You said you contribute $120 a year. Fine. I just want to go back to these various statements that chapter has made, and my question is not, why did they make the statements? I'm sure that we can look up what the ACLU of Southern California said in which context. I just want to know your own views on it. I'm trying to figure out, do they speak for you on these matters? That's what I'm trying to ascertain here. So here, let's try this again. They have written, the ACLU of Southern California, that that U.S. policing has historical roots in slave patrols and in the forced dislocation of indigenous youth. Now that's a pretty strong statement. I just want to know, does that represent your viewpoint?
Senator, I do not have knowledge or background in terms of the origins, and I don't know what they were referring to there. I can speak to my experience with federal law enforcement, and I have tremendous respect and have worked closely, respect for, and have worked closely with federal law enforcement who I believe uphold the rule of law and serve the public interest every day.
Well, so are you telling me you think that U.S. policing, the U.S. police forces, I think the first standing U.S. police force was in my state, I think it was in the city of St. Louis. Are you saying that you think they might have historical roots in slave patrols?
That I don't know. I know the U.S. Marshal Service likes to state that they're the first federal law enforcement agency founded in the initial Judiciary Act.
My question is, do you think that U.S. policing has historical roots in slave patrols?
I'm not aware of that, Senator.
You don't think that it does? What about this? The same letter says that the presence of police has devastating and discriminatory impacts on tens of thousands of California students. Do you agree with that?
Senator, I don't know the context in which what that's specifically describing or talking about.
But in your own experience, I mean, are they speaking for you here? Do you agree with that?
In my experience, in Fresno, in the Fresno division of the Eastern District of California, on balance, I believe that the police, including the police departments, which our office works with closely, and certainly federal and state and local law enforcement, are a positive influence.
Okay, good. Let's talk about ICE for a second, because I know you testified that you've worked with ICE. So the same chapter of the ACLU that you're a member of has said that ICE is not welcome here. They've gone on to say, as part of a package that they devised for children, they released door hangers, posters, and coloring sheets for children that included guidelines for how to use them. The guidelines said ICE agents resort to trickery and deception. Do you agree with that? Has that been your experience, that ICE agents resort to trickery and deception?
My experience, Senator, is with working with ICE agents on cases under 8 U.S.C. 1326 and other related criminal immigration cases, and I have found them to be diligent, hardworking, and ethical law enforcement officers.
Okay, good. So I think we've established that the ACLU of Southern California, at least as to these statements, they don't speak for you. I mean, you have the views that you've just articulated.
My views are not, I'm not familiar with all of the ACLU's views, but certainly I have independent views.
Okay, good. Let me just ask you about this. You've also been a frequent contributor to the group Act Blue. This is a group that, as my colleagues on this panel have emphasized of late, have supported fundraisers with the theme, "All Cops Are Bastards." Have you contributed any of those fundraisers through Act Blue? All Cops Are Bastards fundraisers?
No, Senator.
Does that represent your view or experience with law enforcement?
That does not represent my view of law enforcement.
Okay. I think that those are helpful answers. I think we maybe could have gotten there a little bit earlier with my colleagues, but I'm glad to hear you distance yourself, frankly, from these statements, because I think those statements are pretty outrageous. And it concerns me a little bit that you're a member of a chapter that regularly, and we're not talking about one thing, we're talking about multiple letters, multiple projects, multiple issues over years from this particular chapter. But I'm gratified to hear you say that they do not represent you on these matters. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Senator Hawley. Mr. Sheriff, just quickly, I just want to pick up on my colleague's point here for just the sake of clarification in simple language. You've been asked now several times about your membership and small contributions to the ACLU. Is it fair to say that making small contributions to an organization does not mean you espouse every position that that organization endorses?
That is certainly correct, Senator.
Thank you. Judge Becerra, Judge Damian, Mr. Leibowitz, Mr. Sheriff, you each spent several years serving as federal prosecutors. Thank you all for that work and that service. During that time, you've each played an important role in sentencing decisions in criminal cases, making recommendations about sentences to judges hearing the case. Can you each speak to the process and considerations that you used in making sentencing recommendations during your time as a federal prosecutor? Ms. Damian, do you mind beginning?
Sure, and thank you, Senator Butler. So as a prosecutor, when I started, the guidelines were mandatory, and then eventually they became advisory. So as a prosecutor, one of the first places you do, or at least I did look, was to the sentencing guidelines to get a sense of what the range could or should be. And of course, there's whatever the charging statute that the person is charged with usually also contains a statutory maximum, perhaps a statutory minimum. So you look to the charging statute. And then also 18 U.S.C. 3553A also contains different considerations that you know that the court will be taking into consideration. Now, as the prosecutor, obviously you're making the recommendations. As the court, you're making the ultimate determination. But I would look to all of those places to get a sense of where the defendant should fall, and in considering and making a determination of what sentence I would recommend. With all of that, and of course this is really built into 3553A, to me it was always important to consider fairness and balance. I tried a lot of cases, I prosecuted a lot of cases. I was aware of where some people fell, where my colleagues' cases, defendants fell. I liked to see, if possible, that people that were charged with the same thing who may have equal backgrounds were falling somewhere similar in their recommended guidelines ranges.
Thank you for that, Ms. Damian. I think it's the issue of sentencing and the process that our judiciary uses is incredibly important to unpack and help the public to understand. For those of you who also have been federal prosecutors, is there anything that you would offer different in your process and/or considerations that Ms. Damian has outlined?
So I would only add, Senator, and this is going back because I haven't been a prosecutor for many years now, but one of the things I also considered, and I think prosecutors still consider today, is the charging decision. Because so often what you charge and how you charge the case affects the sentence. And so as a district court judge, I'm bound to what recommendations will be before me, in large part based on the charges. So I think prosecutors have enormous obligations with respect to charging decisions, because I think in many cases that ultimately will affect the choices, if any, that a judge might have in sentencing someone.
Just with one last quick question, Mr. Sheriff, I noted that there are not very many of us who bring together Mississippi and California, and I just can't let the opportunity pass me. Can you talk about your experience at the Mississippi Teacher Corps and what led you to choose to be a part of this program?
Senator, I've seen in my own family how important education was to advance folks. And even before I went to law school, I had tremendous appreciation for the opportunities that I've been afforded through education and more generally in this country. And I'm also was aware, and I became even more aware through teaching in LaFleur County, outside of Greenwood, Itta Bena, and a school right outside of Greenwood in 2 locations, of the disparities in education across this country. And I believe firmly that there are students all over this country, including in very small towns, who have tremendous capabilities and tremendous potential. And we have one of the greatest higher education systems in the country, in the world. I believe it is the best in the world. And I don't know that our public education is as, I would like to see it be at that same level.
As would many of us. Thank you, Mr. Sheriff. Senator Welch.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Leibowitz, among the many areas of effort as a prosecutor, you did some work with Guantanamo, as I understand it.
That's correct, Senator. I was very privileged to be part of a team that reviewed cases to determine whether they would be suitable for Article III prosecution.
Right, and there's a number of us here, led by the chair, Senator Durbin, who've called for really closure of Guantanamo. It's been, it's millions of dollars. People are there, 19 of them, without any trial whatsoever. And a recent UN report found that 19 of the men who remain there have never been charged with a crime, which is a continued violation of their rights, but of the rights of victims and their families. Can you tell us about your work on that team and what you concluded about the ability to try suspected terrorists in federal court?
Senator, I believe 2 things would preclude me from answering much of your question. One is the classified nature of what I reviewed, but also the second is part of your question, I think, goes to the canons. But I can't answer this part of it, which is we were privileged as part of a team in the Southern District of New York during a critical period of time where the office was going to determine if cases were suitable for Article III prosecution, which means that no matter how bad you are, no matter what you're charged with, you get the full rights and remedies that all Americans get. And there was one case that I'm sure, Senator Welch, you're aware of, that was tried in the Southern District of New York while I was there. It was the case against Ahmed Gayalani. And my colleague, who this panel and the Senate recently confirmed to be a United States District Judge in in New Jersey, he tried that case. And that was deemed suitable for Article III prosecution. It was determined by people much above my pay grade that many of those cases would not be suitable for Article III prosecution.
Well, so just setting aside the policy debate, and I know this is, the policy set here, not by you, what's your understanding of the law as it relates to the indefinite detention of suspected terrorists without charging them with a crime?
Senator, there's 2 short answers to that. First, it's been so long since I've been close to it that I really don't know. And secondly, I would say, there are habeas cases that are brought all the time in Article III courts, and if I was so fortunate to be confirmed, I would be in the Southern District of Florida, which is not that far away. So I would not want to comment upon even a possible habeas case that could come before me.
Judge Austin, I just want to, I know you've done some work in drug courts.
Yes.
Right? And that's a big deal in Vermont. As a matter of fact, our senior status revered Judge Sessions wants to spend a lot of time on drug courts. I happen to be a big believer in them. They save money, but it's more than that. It really has had a real impact on recidivism. Most of the people there have a real substance abuse problem that sometimes then morphs into a criminal situation. So I just want to ask you about the Bridge program, and I know you preside over that as a magistrate judge, and can you just discuss your experience with that program in South Carolina and how you see that program being beneficial to the justice system?
Yes, Senator. I actually really, that's one of the fun parts of my job as presiding over Bridge Court. Yes, sir. I call it the fun part of my job. The individuals that are entered into Bridge Court, there's been a determination by the U.S. Attorney's Office and the Probation Office that the foundation of the reason why they are in federal court is their drug use. And so in drug court, what we try to do is give them tools and resources. We provide them with mentors to try and help them address the drug use issue and any other issues that might be kind of forcing them or pushing them in that direction. Sometimes it's education. Sometimes it's homelessness. Issues like that. If we can help them address that, help them find jobs, help them.
So you have the resources that
Absolutely.
are available through the court process
Yes,
to assist and follow up?
Yes, sir. So our probation office assigns each individual to a drug counselor. They're assigned mentors. There's also mentors, excuse me, in the legal community. We have attorneys who come in and act as mentors as well to these individuals. We help them find jobs. And then we have meetings meetings every 2 weeks. They come into court. And the first thing I ask them is, tell me something good. Tell me something good that happened to you in the past 2 weeks. And it's interesting because the first time they come in, it's like, I don't know anything that happened that was good. But I'm like, you made it 2 weeks without using drugs.
Yeah, that is good.
So let's start there. And then, by the end, they're talking and they're telling me everything that's going on. But I really enjoy the drug program. I believe that the majority of our individuals who graduate are successful. And I think it just helps them when they return back into the community. They have tools that they can use to make sure that they stay on the right track.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I thank all the nominees. I yield back.
Thank you, Senator Welch. And as we are bringing today's hearing to a close, I have the honor of being number 100, which gives me the privilege to close us out by just saying thank you to all of our nominees for your commitment to public service, for the leadership that you've offered the legal community in your time, and frankly, for your leadership. It is not lost on any of us that the leadership required to stand in your places and do the work that you are doing in making our community stronger and strengthening public confidence in our judiciary. Senator Coons noted the incredible diversity, professional diversity of this panel, and I can't help but to echo that you all are a remarkable representation of the pipeline of legal scholars that will serve in our judiciary to come. I want to also close by thanking all of your families, your friends that are here to support you. It is also appreciated the time that they take to make sure that you are able to be the best that you can for the community that you serve. And I have the honor of being the youngest senator and adjourning today's hearing. I want to do a quick logistical note. Questions for the record will be due to nominees by 5 p.m. on Wednesday, December 6th, and the record will likewise remain open until that time to submit letters and similar materials. With that, this hearing is adjourned.
Thank you, Senator.